Thank you. We are thankful for today. As leaders, we need to work well together for the people of the Northwest Territories. We ask the Creator for blessings for this. As Dene people, some of us pray in a different way. I'll say the Lord's Prayer in my language.
Nik ein wohne wohne jak in der Zeko ich die negat in der Zeko what at that da die Zeke going die da gets an auch die kenne auch die only what in the water gonna die so da share hot in there yet have yet done is it is it out share hot in the city must show.
Please be seated. Thank you, Jonas Lafferty, for the opening prayer and reflections. Minister statements. Minister for Environment, Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I want to talk about the Government of the Northwest Territories' new approach to addressing climate change. From community resilience to economic opportunities, the challenges posed by climate change are urgent, complex, and interconnected, with many other aspects of life here in the Northwest Territories. This is why the GNWT is moving to a joint approach that brings together climate change and energy strategies, with the aim of taking more efficient, coherent, and impactful actions across the government. Mr. Speaker, climate change is a reality that is affecting NWT residents, ecosystems, and northern ways of life. The territory currently experiences climate change effects through thawing permafrost and shifting weather patterns that will likely change even more in the coming decades. Through an integrated approach to energy and climate change, we will develop a better coordinated response that tackles both present-day impacts and future risks in the north. Climate change and energy security are connected in a way that cannot be separated. We need to ensure that as we transition to a cleaner, net zero future, we are also preparing communities and residents to withstand the impacts of climate change. The interconnectedness of climate change and energy, infrastructure, public health, environmental protection, and the economy requires that we align our efforts and resources. Within this joint strategy, the Department of Environment and Climate Change's primary responsibility is to lead and work with other departments to build climate knowledge and implement climate change adaptation actions to enhance the territorial resilience against climate-related risk and disruptions. The department is also exploring ways to reduce land-based greenhouse gas emissions. Important considerations for all GNWT climate change-related actions include maintaining affordability and security by addressing climate change-related supply chain disruptions, emergency management costs, and impacts on infrastructure and housing. Maintaining and growing our economy by supporting resource development that is consistent with our net zero commitment, and advancing economic diversification opportunities like agriculture, tourism, and the potential market for carbon offsets. Supporting safety, healthy and resilient communities by addressing the impacts of a changing climate on public safety, cultural ecosystems, health, and traditional ways of life. And continuing to collaborate with Indigenous governments, Indigenous organizations, and community governments to coordinate adaptation actions. The joint strategy will recognize that Indigenous governments and Indigenous organizations are developing and executing their own adaptation solutions that reflect their specific priorities and provide ways for us to advocate for and efficiently use resources together. The strategy will acknowledge that federal investment will be key to implementing the many climate change-related actions that are needed. Mr. Speaker, the GNWT's ongoing commitment to engage with Indigenous governments, Indigenous organizations, and other stakeholders through the Council of Leaders, NWT Climate Change Council, NWT Climate Change Youth Council, and other forums will continue to guide our efforts to advance climate action in the North. We are committed to regularly updating the public on the process of this joint strategy and to working together with all partners to address the urgent need for climate adaptation. We anticipate the final integrated strategy will be released in the spring of 2026, along with the revised Climate Change Action Plan, based on extensive engagement and feedback we have received from Northerners. The GNWT remains committed to preparing the Northwest Territories to face the challenges and opportunities from climate change. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Minister statement. Minister responsible for strategic infrastructure, energy, and supply chains.
Mr. Speaker, today I want to speak about the Government of the Northwest Territories' new integrated approach to energy and climate change, and how the Department of Infrastructure's work on energy will help build a stronger, more affordable, and more resilient future for our territory. Energy powers our communities, heats our homes, fuels our transportation, and propels businesses and the economy. But today, the Northwest Territories faces some of the highest energy costs in Canada, aging energy infrastructure, and increasing impacts from climate change. Our approach to energy must evolve. Last fall, Mr. Speaker, our government committed to achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. This commitment is driving the development of a new integrated strategy for energy and climate change. As our teams complete this work over the coming months, there are 3 themes I'd like to introduce today. This strategy will be designed to improve energy affordability and security, ensure community safety and resilience, and unlock new economic opportunities through the clean energy transition. It will be people-centered and built around enabling conditions that allow communities, economies, and governments to thrive in the face of climate change pressures. And as a joint strategy, it will bring together expertise from across departments in a coordinated whole-of-government approach. And first, strengthening our energy security by modernizing our energy infrastructure. Our power infrastructure is aging and increasingly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Overhauling our power generation assets, upgrading our electricity grid, and continuing to invest in local clean energy solutions across the territory are key steps we are taking to ensure our energy system can serve Northerners for generations. This will include refurbishing of key hydro assets in the North Slave, as well as the development of an approach to modernize our grid and support the integration of renewable energy in remote communities. Our goal is simple: ensure all communities have reliable and secure energy for decades to come. Second, supporting energy affordability. Mr. Speaker, Northerners currently pay the highest electricity rates in the country, between 25 to 34 cents per kilowatt hour after subsidies. In some remote communities, the unsubsidized cost is as high as 74 cents per kilowatt hour. This is 2 to 3 times the Canadian average of 12 cents. We need to give residents in hydro-served communities more affordable, lower emission options like switching to electric vehicles and, where power supply is available, electric heating. These shifts increase power sales, reduce emissions, and then ease pressure on electricity rates. Programs and services supporting residents, communities, and businesses to reduce energy consumption and adopt clean energy technologies, such as Arctic Energy Alliance and the Greenhouse Gas Grant Program, will continue to be key moving forward, and soon we'll be announcing the full availability of an electric vehicle corridor from Yellowknife to the Alberta border. The government's recent set of directions to the Public Utilities Board will help support all of these important changes. Third, unlocking economic opportunities through the energy transition. Clean energy is about more than reducing emissions. It is also about building a stronger, more sustainable economy. This includes creating good jobs, supporting new industries, and long-term growth supported by renewable energy, which in turn will support critical minerals development. The Tulsan Hydro Expansion Project is a leading example of this approach. This is not just an energy project, it is a project of partnership. We are advancing Tulsan together with Indigenous governments in the Tulsan watershed, the Northwest Territories Métis Nation, the Acacia-Dene First Nations, and the Salt River First Nation. This project has the potential to connect 70% of our population to clean, renewable hydropower while connecting two major energy grids. It will reduce our reliance on diesel, and it will help support the development of critical minerals opportunities by providing clean energy at the front end of those supply chains. By investing in transformative projects, we are not just reacting to change, we are shaping it. We are unlocking new economic opportunities, strengthening sovereignty over our resources, and ensuring that Northerners benefit directly from the transition to a clean energy future. The Departments of Infrastructure and Environment and Climate Change will continue working together to develop this joint strategy with a final release planned for spring of 2026. And together we are building a net zero future that is affordable, reliable, and resilient, and led by Northerners for Northerners. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister responsible for Strategic Infrastructure, Energy and Supply Chain. Minister statements. Mr. Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to share that the Government of the Northwest Territories has launched this year's United Way Workplace Giving Campaign. This annual campaign gives GNWT employees a simple and meaningful way to support programs that make a real difference in communities across the territory. Through payroll deductions, employees can choose direct donations to United Way NWT, helping fund local organizations that tackle poverty, support youth, and improve community health and well-being. Mr. Speaker, over the past few years, Northerners have come together during some very difficult times, supporting one another through wildfires, floods, and other emergencies. GNWT employees played a big role in those efforts, and I want to thank everyone who stepped up. This campaign is a chance to carry that same spirit forward by investing in long-term community support. United Way NWT works with organizations that know their communities best and are helping build a stronger, healthier North. I also want to recognize the important role of the Union of Northern Workers, that the Union of Northern Workers continues to play in the success of this campaign. Their support and partnership reflect the shared values that guide our work as public servants. Mr. Speaker, I encourage all GNWT employees to consider signing up. Every contribution makes a difference, and together, we can help ensure that support reaches the people and places that need it most. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to provide an update on the Marine Transportation Service operation for the 2025 sailing season. Every spring, residents and businesses across the territory are eager to plan shipments for their essential goods and equipment by our barges along the Mackenzie River, Great Slave Lake, and all the communities in the Western Arctic. As people are aware, the 2024 Marine Transportation Services operations were affected by record low water levels. This created unnavigable conditions along the Mackenzie River and presented a challenge to the Canadian Coast Guard, who were unable to put buoys in the water. These buoys are key navigational aids. Not only was our sailing season disrupted, but our marine operations for other commercial shipping companies were also cancelled. Thankfully, proactively contingency planning efforts made it possible for affected customers in the Beaufort Delta and the Inuvialuit Settlement region to make arrangements for their cargo to be redirected to our terminal in Tuktoyaktuk. Mr. Speaker, our waterways represent an important piece of the North supply chain puzzle. As the essential resupply options may be for many remote communities during the spring and summer months, marine transportation services contribution towards the success of the NWT supply chain is undeniable. There is great work being done to contribute to this service, and it spans various departments, divisions, and sectors, both within and outside of the Government of Northwest Territories. Mr. Speaker, to give you an update on the 2025 shipping season, the Canadian Coast Guard has not yet made final decisions on whether or not the buoys can be placed in the water, and Marine Transportation Services continues to monitor water levels along the Mackenzie River to assess options with resupply operations. Sailing plans are being developed based on cargo loads that Marine Transportation Services is expected to receive if the river is navigable. We remain adaptable to the changing forecast this season and are continuing to work closely with the hydrology team at the Department of Environment and Climate Change to monitor water levels along the way. In the event of last year's circumstances repeating themselves, Marine Transportation Services has developed contingency plans that may give us the opportunity to ship from south side of Dooley Ferry Crossing, and staff are working closely with the Canadian Coast Guard to allow some buoys to be placed in key locations between the Dooley Ferry Crossing and Toledo. Should any route change disrupt shipments, staff will be available to assist affected customers, like we did last year. Our Fuel Services Division is also involved should any logistical plans change, and our staff are prepared to work towards another busy winter resupply season to make up any essential services that may be affected by low water levels. Mr. Speaker, I want to make it clear, regardless of the water levels, improvements to procedures and service delivery continue to be made by our hardworking staff. This work includes using vessels more efficiently and reducing downtime during the sailing season. Mr. Speaker, in closing, the team is watching the water levels closely and planning for each scenario. We will continue to keep the public aware once the Coast Guard has received the decision, and as we better understand the water levels along the Mackenzie River and any impacts to this year's shipping season. And I will just add, hot off the press, the Canadian Coast Guard has gone out today to assess the water levels at the mouth of the Mackenzie River. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Infrastructure. Minister statements. Minister statements. Member statements. Member statements. Member from Range Lake.
Mr. Speaker, last year, hundreds of Northerners who rely on extended health benefits were suddenly confronted by new income thresholds driven by cuts, which would determine who our health system would support within the costs of their medication and who were now on their own. This so-called rationalization of a crucial health care benefit has caused serious anxiety and hardship. These income thresholds are unfair to my constituents struggling with a cost of living crisis, alongside the fact that many are already paying out of pocket for other necessary health services like home care and accessibility supports. When these changes were announced, I also received calls from many seniors who were concerned their benefits were at risk too. But I was able to reassure them that the Minister of Health and Social Services has made it clear to this House and to Northerners that seniors' benefits would not be touched. But, Mr. Speaker, lo and behold, several seniors in my Range Lake riding were recently charged for over-the-counter medications. And initially, I believed this had just been an honest mistake. But I was shocked to find out that it was I who was mistaken, because somewhere along the way, that promise to not touch seniors' benefits wasn't as much as a guarantee as we were led to believe. But we were able to push back, and the Minister was able to assure us that these constituents would not have to pay a cent for their medication because that was the right thing to do. Yet I am still deeply concerned that these changes were made and proposed in the first place. And they could even return, Mr. Speaker, as in an email I've received, the Minister's office has stated, quote, "A decision has been made not to proceed with changes to the coverage for over-the-counter products under Extended Health Benefits Program at this time." Let me be perfectly clear when I say the time to charge seniors for their medication is never. Not after further consultation, not after establishing a new income threshold, never. And if the minister can see the wisdom in reversing cuts to seniors' benefits, it's time she opened her eyes to the strain it is causing on other Range Lakers and reinstate full extended health benefits to all Northerners. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member from Range Lake. Member statement. Member from Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Home and fire insurability are major concerns in the NWT, and the cost of insurance premiums may continue to rise for homeowners. The level of risk determines the cost of insurance premiums. Canadian insurers consider the likelihood of a customer or group of customers with a similar set of circumstances making a claim and how much those claims might cost. The price for premiums is based, in part, on an insurer's best estimate of the amount it will be required to pay out in claims in any given year. The Office of the Superintendent of Insurance, or OSI, regulates the business of insurance in the NWT and enforces our Insurance Act and its regulations. The Act and regulations cover licensing and regulation for insurance companies operating here. It's difficult to establish how many homes are currently uninsured across the NWT and for what reasons they've been denied coverage. Reasons for denial may not be public or could be based on the insurer's proprietary risk assessment model. The OSI does not track this information, and it's difficult to connect the rising costs of premiums using this risk-based model to the consumer and community price indexes that are published by the NWT Bureau of Statistics. While insurers themselves set the costs for their premiums and products, there are mitigation efforts that local governments could undertake to help reduce costs. For example, concerning commercial fire insurance, the presence of hydrants and a full-time fire department in a community could bring down costs. I'm not going to go down the municipal funding gap rabbit hole quite yet, though, Mr. Speaker. Section 270 of the Insurance Act requires that the Superintendent of Insurance prepare annual reports for the Minister. Part of these reports track the increase in amounts of insurance premiums through the amount of gross receivable insurance premiums. For example, there was a 24% increase between 2019 and 2023, the last annual report being published on December 30th, 2023. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll have questions for the Minister of Finance today.
Thank you, member from Great Slave. Member statements. Member from Frame Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to build upon the statement made by my colleague just now. Mr. Speaker, home insurance is proving to be a growing barrier to home ownership in the Northwest Territories and a financial challenge for homeowners. Mr. Speaker, my constituents have told me about their inability to obtain home insurance in some cases, or costs of their insurance skyrocketing year over year. Some residents with insurance policies have had them cancelled because of wood pellet boilers being installed. As bad as it may be in Yellowknife, I can't imagine how difficult it must be for some homeowners in small communities to obtain insurance. Mr. Speaker, this issue is about accessibility and affordability of home and fire insurance in the NWT has been raised in the House before. Residents have no recourse except to complain about unaffordable increases or their difficulty even getting a policy to the Office of the Superintendent of Insurance and speaking to MLAs. During the 19th Assembly, the Honourable Member for Yellowknife South committed as Minister of Finance to instruct the Department of Finance to investigate Saskatchewan Government Insurance, a Crown corporation owned by the Government of Saskatchewan. Mr. Speaker, we need to follow up on this now to see if SGI can provide us affordable insurance in the NWT. Established in Saskatchewan in 1944, SGI now provides insurance in 5 Canadian provinces as SGI Canada, operating in British Columbia, Alberta, Manitoba, and Ontario. It has operated in Manitoba since 1993, in Ontario from 2001, in Alberta since 2006, and in BC beginning in 2015. It offers home, farm, business, and even auto insurance. I believe it could operate here. I will have questions for the Minister of Finance at the appropriate time, Mr. Speaker. We need to get a handle on this growing insurance cost issue in the Northwest Territories. Thank you.
Member from Frame Lake. Member statements. Member from the Sawtooth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Low Water Solutions. Mr. Speaker, there is no better time than the present for us to work together with the federal government to realize the dream that is fully completing the Mackenzie Valley Highway, or MVH. Mr. Speaker, becoming a reality, the MVH campaign plan will involve the federal engagements with Our Member of Parliament, Cabinet Minister, GWT Envoy to Ottawa, SATU Secretariat Incorporated MOU arrangement. This next step is overwhelming and, more importantly, extremely encouraging. Mr. Speaker, we are in the infancy of a new federal Liberal government. Throughout the federal election campaign, we heard that opening Canada, removing trade barriers, and supporting nation-building initiatives are important priorities for the newly elected Prime Minister. These priorities were once again highlighted in King Charles' speech from the throne that took place in Ottawa. Was very encouraging. Mr. Speaker, the completion of the Mackenzie Valley Highway is a GDP contributor during and after construction. The speech from the throne highlighted that the federal government will work closely with provinces, territories, Indigenous peoples to identify and catalyst projects of nation significance. The Mackenzie Valley Highway will serve as a catalyst to Canada from coast to coast to coast, deepen Canada's ties to the world. Mr. Speaker, the original $700 million application of 2015, we gained since then 26% equity position in MVH Phase 1. Significant work has been done, such as the Canyon Creek All-Season Access Road, the Prohibition Creek Access Road, community engagements, design, geotechnical studies as well. But much work remains, Mr. Speaker. Our partnership with the government needs the business case and environmental assessment completion, which is drawing closer by the weeks. I will have questions to the Minister of Infrastructure at the appropriate time.
Thank you, member from the Sawtooth. Member statements. Member from the Deschaux.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to discuss Northwest Territories Power Corporation, NTPC, and the Tolston Hydro Project, which provides power to Enterprise and Ketlo Diche First Nation in my riding. NTPC's mandate includes investing in core assets, increasing the distribution customer base, reducing emissions, and reducing fuel consumption. Mr. Speaker, it is important to promote affordable clean energy across the territory, but I want to see more affordable power rates in my riding, especially in Fort Providence and Kakisa. According to the 2023-2024 annual report, NTPC incurred limited physical asset damage during wildfire season, but fires and evacuations greatly affected the corporation's ability to complete planned operational work and capital projects. Mr. Speaker, one of these projects was the overhaul of the Tolston Hydro facility, which was originally scheduled to be completed by November 2023, but was only opened on April 1st this year after repeated delays. Mr. Speaker, estimates for overhaul costs are now over $97 million. We know from the public accounts that in previous years, NTPC lapsed tens of millions of dollars in budget capital expenditures. Mr. Speaker, lapses and delays impact costs for residents, and they worsen greenhouse gas emissions because of increased reliance on diesel power generation. Project delays also mean fewer work opportunities for local residents. Mr. Speaker, I want to know next steps for making clean energy accessible across the territory. I will have questions for the minister responsible for NCPC at the appropriate time. Merci, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member for the Deschaux. Member statements. Member from Nunavut Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for many years, Indigenous governments have raised concerns about the GNWT's approach to traditional use cabins. They've made it clear that requiring recreational leases and charging fees for members' cabins does not align with their understanding of Aboriginal rights. Mr. Speaker, I brought it up in this House before. I know my colleague, Minister Sembler, in 2023 had brought it up as well. Most recently, Mr. Speaker, ECC held a 2-day workshop on Yellowknife meant to advance the conversation around this topic. It is my understanding that progress was made and GNWT is now working to develop follow-up materials for Indigenous governments responding to the discussions and proposals made through that forum. Mr. Speaker, I understand that GNWT has made several key commitments that are meant to respond directly to the concerns raised by the Indigenous governments. One, they committed to developing a unique authorization and management approach for traditional use camps and cabins. Two, agreeing to set the annual rent for this new authorization at zero cost or nominal value of $1, eliminating this financial barrier to traditional land use. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the GNWT is committing to working collaboratively with Indigenous governments to establish the terms and conditions for this new authorization so that it provides a level of flexibility and regional customization while still meeting the GNWT's basic interest in the management of public lands. Mr. Speaker, it's my hope that these commitments demonstrate that our government does recognize the importance of traditional uses of the land by Indigenous people, that they represent a significant shift in our approach to land management, one that better respects the spirit and intent of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. While we work together with Indigenous governments on this longer-term solution, the government must also take immediate steps to address some present and ongoing concerns. Such, Mr. Speaker, is ensuring we continue the pause and collections program available to Indigenous people with recreational leases and ensuring we will not take collection action against them. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we must ensure that through the Intergovernmental Council Secretariat, the GNWT is advancing a potential amendment to the Northwest Territories lands regulation that will allow us to change a nominal fee for recreational leases held by the Indigenous cabin owners in the areas where their Indigenous government has an asserted or established right to harvest. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member from Nunavut Lake. Member statement. Member from Moultrie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the territory needs transitional housing. Mr. Speaker, I have constituents who are homeless and in unstable situation. Mr. Speaker, we are in a crisis. Last year, one shelter director in Yellowknife estimated, quote, if all shelters in town stop taking in people or stop taking people in when they reach capacity, there would be an extra 50 people living on the street. Mr. Speaker, I need to highlight this, that many of these people, quote, many of these people, end quote, are our Indigenous brothers and sisters. They are someone's child, parent, or parents, grandparents, parents, siblings, aunts, or uncles. Mr. Speaker, this is a sensitive issue for many of our people who found themselves in tough situations. My heart goes out to them. In April, media reported on Yellowknife's, quote, point-in-time count showing that 327 people were homeless in 2024, a 5% increase from 2021. Mr. Speaker, small communities face the same problem. Some single men will never get off the waiting list for housing. Some of them are saying we will never get a unit or a house in their lifetime. They will not see it. This is what they're saying. It's not my word, it's their word. The federal and territorial government signed an agreement in December 2024, committing $1 million each over 2 years. Mr. Speaker, this money is intended to alleviate capacity challenges identified by local shelters operator while addressing encampments and helping find homes for people sleeping in tents. Their goal is to increase supportive housing options for people at risk, but $2 million will not have a big enough impact. Mr. Speaker, can I have unanimous consent to conclude my statement? Thank you.
Thank you, member from Moultrie. Member from Moultrie seeking unanimous consent to conclude her statement. Seeing no nays, you may conclude your statement.
Mr. Speaker, we must use these programs to help people struggling in small communities. In Cleacher Region, the government's Northern Pathway to Housing program partnered with Bichoko Friendship Center to provide transitional housing. But people need wraparound supports for health and addiction needs like the ones offered by the Housing First program and the new facility. How can we extend wraparound support to our small communities? I will have questions for the Minister of Housing at appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Member from Wolfie. Member statement. Member from Trinidad-Willity.
Mr. Speaker, we've all heard about the significant cuts coming to the Jordan Principal Program, a federal program that many schools depend on to support their students. For weeks now, schools across the north have watched as their application for Jordan Principal funding for the fall have come back denied, leaving them with a massive funding shortfall. Let me give you a concrete example of how devastating these cuts are. Last week, I learned that Tootsake Dene First Nation School is losing 5 full-time education assistants, all of whom were funded through the Jordan Principal Program. In Ford Resolution, where the Métis students make up a large portion of the school population, new eligibility restriction means Dene School stands to lose a significant amount of federal funding. Meanwhile, the Department of Education, Culture and Employment currently funds just 1 student assistant in Tootsake, and only for a few hours a week. This is a stark example of the chronic underfunding of Indigenous education in our territory, despite the fact that education is also a sacred treaty right. Yes. This long-standing neglect has already forced families to leave their traditional communities in search of better education opportunities, and now even schools in Yellowknife are at risk. Together, the Catholic and public school boards in Yellowknife, they receive over $50 million from Jordan Principal funding each year, funding that is now in serious jeopardy. When schools reopen this fall, a crisis of Indigenous education will begin, unless this minister takes immediate action to restore the Jordan Principal funding. So today, I'm calling on the Minister of Education, Culture and Employment to meet with school boards across the north this summer and to provide a clear, immediate commitment to restore at least some of this critical funding. If the minister fails to take this opportunity, she risks becoming the first education minister in the north, leaving education in a worse shape than she found it. And she also inherited this from the 19th Assembly, so this is very important to the Indigenous people in my riding. Mr. Speaker, I will have questions for the Minister of ECE at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Member from Trinidad-Willity. Member statements. Member from Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when we see people on the street who are in a bad state, some of whom are unhoused and some of whom prefer to live in encampments rather than in shelters, we tend to jump to different conclusions about what should be done. Some people believe they should be moved out of public spaces and ultimately that law enforcement officers should step in, and others see unhoused people as victims who simply require more supports and resources. Either way, we tend to focus on what should be done to these people or for these people. But what if we ask a different question? What can we ask from these people? What are everyone's responsibilities in this situation? The government certainly has responsibilities to provide decent options for shelter, but we often overlook the fact that people who are unhoused, even when they have addictions, also need to be accountable, especially when they're threatening or harming others. I think that asking for accountability is a basic sign of respect. It means recognizing someone as a self-determining human. The trouble is when it's GNWT staff who are tasked with enforcing accountability or consequences. Say someone who works for the government comes along and says, come on, you owe it to the GNWT to pay your rent on time, or to stop damaging your housing unit, or to stop disturbing your neighbors, or stop bringing drug dealers around here. Well, people can rightfully say, I don't owe the GNWT anything. It's the government that set up residential schools and took our homes and land away in the past and got us into this mess in the first place. But what if a respected elder comes along and says, okay, you owe it to your family, to your community, to keep your home safe, to keep your neighborhood safe? What if an unhoused person has one of their peers or someone with lived experience come along and say, hey, maybe you could settle down or stop yelling at people. You know better than this. Our law enforcement system has a critical role, but it struggles to hold people accountable over the longer term. Putting minor offenders on a revolving door in and out of jail doesn't seem to help. That's where a move towards restorative justice approaches is so important. The community as a whole needs to hold an offender accountable. I'm hopeful that we can use these same kinds of restorative justice principles to address encampments in public spaces, public intoxication, and threatening behaviors. Mr. Speaker, can I ask for unanimous consent just to conclude my statement?
From Yellowknife North. Member from Yellowknife North is seeking unanimous consent to conclude her statement. Hearing no nays, you may conclude your statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to my colleagues. So I am hopeful we can use these kinds of restorative justice principles to address encampments, public intoxication, and threatening behaviors by figuring out perhaps community-led and peer support teams who might be able to more meaningfully hold people accountable for their actions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member from Yellowknife North. Member statements. Member from Yellowknife Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I talked about the envoy yesterday, and I wanted to continue where I left off. Mr. Speaker, as a reminder, just to set the table, as they say, Ontario's budget is $232 billion. The GNWT hides in its shadow being 1% of that. But the Ottawa envoy is $140,000 a year. Mr. Speaker, the Quebec budget annually is approximately $166 billion. In round numbers, that's about 1.3 of our budget in comparison to them, Mr. Speaker. So, in other words, they pay their envoy $140,000. How are we seeing in comparison in any straight line, why is our envoy worth $440,000, Mr. Speaker? Why is this envoy, this friend of the Premier's, worth 2 to 3 times as much as the Ontario or the Quebec envoy? I can't see the math, Mr. Speaker. And by the way, for the record, I looked up the phrase envoy, and it can be used in many different ways. There's some interpretations, and I want to say for the record, it can also be exchanged for the word ambassador. Mr. Speaker, this person is sent on a mission. Sounds like an envoy. And I thought, well, considering we're paying this person $440,000 a year, we better address him properly. So how do you address an envoy or an ambassador? You use the phrase, Your Excellency. Mr. Speaker, is there value for money? Mr. Speaker, I see it more likely as bringing back the unicorns from our imagination to life than seeing value for money here. Are there other options? Absolutely, Mr. Speaker. I've called and spoken to 2 different political advocacy groups. They hire a team at a fraction of the price. Their monthly fee runs between $2,000 and $25,000 per month. It's all about what you want, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, their range is based on the size of a team for your issues, your concerns. They'll focus, they'll sit in and negotiate, and of course, they'll fight for your issues. But what's interesting is they bring a plan, Mr. Speaker. They have a matrix of deliverables for your money, Mr. Speaker. You get to see where your money's going, Mr. Speaker. You ask, Mr. Speaker, what is this advocacy paying for? I know this $440,000 something is lacking. There's a word here I'm lacking. Oh, it's called transparency, Mr. Speaker. There's no transparency. Mr. Speaker, monthly, this is monthly, this is $37,000 for this ambassador. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yay. Thank you, member from Yellowknife Centre. Member statements. Member from Hay River South.
Mr. Speaker, this week from June 4th to 6th, Hay River transforms from a quiet northern town to the Olympic Village of the Northwest Territories. Yes, it's that time again for the annual NWT Track and Field Championships. If you're from Hay River, you know how significant this event is and how deeply the community is involved. It takes hundreds of volunteer hours and immense dedication to put this together. The community's commitment will be ready to shine when over 1,000 athletes show up to compete. If you're an athlete that's been involved for over 30 years, you likely have fond memories of this trip or this event. I want to take the time to congratulate the Track and Field Committee on organizing this year's event. And thanks to your dedication, the field will once be filled again with young athletes from across the NWT. This commitment deserves the acknowledgement. I'm also looking forward to being a part of this year's event. Now I know what you're thinking. Wait, you're competing? And while I hate to disappoint in my bid for the NWT Senior Athlete of the Year, no, it's not the 500-meter dash or the high jump. I'll be flipping burgers for everybody. So come on down to the world-famous Track Burgers and enjoy the sights and sounds and the smells of one of the greatest North sporting events. Trust me, you don't want to miss these burgers or the action on the field. And finally, a huge thank you, Mr. Speaker, to all the volunteers and athletes and all the sponsors that make this event possible and unforgettable. To all the athletes, have fun, travel safe, and look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member from Hay River South. Member statements. Member from Yonge South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I do every year after Youth Parliament, today I am bringing the words of the youth representative from Yellowknife South to this House, ensuring all members and the public hear the fresh perspectives, innovative solutions, and policy insights reflected in the voice of our youth. And so, Mr. Speaker, this year, Yellowknife South was represented by Lauren Tordiff, and these words are hers. As young people, we inherit the challenges of today and the responsibility to create solutions for tomorrow. If we want to tackle issues like the high cost of living, we must ask ourselves a tough but necessary question: do our current systems still make sense given today's challenges? Take, for example, the cost of electricity in the Northwest Territories. Many residents struggle to afford power, yet we expect a Crown corporation to transition to greener technology while also keeping rates low. The current system forces the Northwest Territories Power Corporation, (NTPC), to pass the costs of infrastructure upgrades directly onto consumers. This makes it difficult for families and businesses to thrive. But what if we did things differently? As the minister responsible for Northwest Territories Power Corporation, I feel the need to promote safety, affordability, and easier distribution among the smaller communities. But how can we regulate this while distribution remains a regulated private sector activity? The government will take responsibility for producing power and lead the transition to renewable energy sources without forcing residents to bear the full financial burden. Meanwhile, private companies could compete to efficiently distribute electricity in our communities. This would not only help reduce costs, but also ensure that cleaner energy becomes a reality in our communities. It might also create opportunities for residents to become micro-generators of power, feeding back into the grid and increasing system resiliency and capacity. A larger problem that affects many communities of the Northwest Territories is the imbalance of energy distribution. The solution I propose is a generating system that will be able to produce enough energy not only for the communities that are present today, but for what will be there in the years to come. So what would this look like? In collaboration with Indigenous governments, we will build a mass generator for each energy district that will provide reliable, affordable, and environmentally sustainable power to all Northwest Territories communities. As young leaders, we must be willing to challenge the status quo. We cannot solve today's problems with outdated solutions. If we have the courage to ask whether our current structures make sense, we can build a stronger, more sustainable future for the Northwest Territories. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Lauren for her strong representation of Yellowknife South. I have only one correction. It's not only young leaders who need to be willing to challenge the status quo. It's a challenge that all leaders need to accept. Thank you to Lauren, and thank you for that inspiration, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, member from Yellowknife South. That's the second time I've got to hear it. So it was an amazing speech there, and it's another one today. Member statements. Colleagues, today I'd like to recognize an individual that received the Life Members Award, formerly called the Honorable or Honorary Life Member from the NWT RPA this past October. This award is not given out annually, but recognizes a member who has made an outstanding contribution to the Recreation and Parks field, who has significantly served in NWT Recreation and Parks and is nearly or has reached the end of their career in the Recreation and Parks field. This past October, it was given to Colin McPherson. I've had the pleasure of working with him when he took the Recreation Coordinator's position in Fort Liard. I can tell you, he made a huge impact on the community and the youth. To this day, people in the community speak highly of him and the things he did for the community. One of the biggest highlights, besides the swimming pool, was his speed skating program. He worked hard to get youth engaged and try out for the Art of Winter Games. After leaving Fort Liard, he moved to the Yukon, then to Nunavut, then to Norman Wells, where he became the Regional Recreation Development Officer for the Sahtu region. Years later, he moved to Fort Smith, then to Yellowknife, where he is the Manager of Community Services for the Sport and Rec Division. During his time in Norman Wells and Fort Smith, I got to work with him on various projects, such as the Northern Youth Abroad Program, Youth Ambassadors Program, Taking Youth, which takes youth to the Canada Winter Summer Games, Art of Winter Games, Pan Am Games, and Winter Olympic Games, and on the development of sport and recreation policies that we are still using today. Colin was one of our guys when it came to aquatics, where it was facility side or the staffing part of the program, he was the one we called. He could come into a community, hear the program, and provide great advice on how to fix it or where to get the necessary part. He was an asset for the communities that he worked with daily and a strong component of the team we worked with. I've included his nomination for him at the end of this statement and asked it to be deemed as read and printed in the Hansard. In closing, there are many stories that I want to share with you, but being reflective of the time, I'd like to congratulate him on receiving this award. Well done, sir. Member statements. Member statements. Returns oral questions. Returns oral questions. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Colleagues, you just heard me give a statement about a friend of mine. He's up here in the, sorry, I'm being a little emotional here. Yeah. I'd like to recognize Colin McPherson, as well as my friends and colleagues, Damon Crosman, Ali Carroll, Allison Brown, Colin Donahue, as well as the Deputy Minister, Gary Brendan, and, you know, my former MSA, but he was also the Executive Director of the Recreation and Parks. Welcome to our Assembly. Recognition of visitors in the gallery, member from Hay River North, or South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I feel you stole my list. I want to echo the recognition of the visitors of the gallery, same people there, but I would also like to add the YK City Councillor, Tom McLennan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member from Hay River South. Recognition of visitors gallery, member from Kamloops.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have a fellow photographer in the House, Vincent Rett. Wanted to say a big old hello to him. He's an incredibly talented Northern artist, and it's always lovely to have people in the gallery, especially ones as talented as him. Thank you.
Kamloops, recognition of visitors gallery, member from Yonley South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to have one of the younger residents of Yellowknife South in the House today. Young Finnegan Gosselin has been spending the day job shadowing with his mother. Thank you.
Finnegan, thank you very much for keeping your mom working hard. So we appreciate you being here. Recognition of visitors in gallery, member from Mophie.
Merci, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Duntlitz Atina Woods Unkera, Lucy Lafferty, Gugahudahunte.
Today we have Lucy Lafferty. She's a wife, and she was a principal. She was also a director of education, and also she is a coordinator. She is a very active for our language. Lucy Lafferty. The interpreter here, Jonas, that is in here. Jonas Lafferty, his wife is also here. As I'd like to say thank you to Lucy Lafferty, and also the young people. Chief Jimmy Bruno School here are also here. Shiloh Simpson and
Nikolai Grosko, the page from Chief Jimmy and Lucy Lafferty is from the community of Betchako, the wife of Jonas Lafferty in Terramussi. And the
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Member from Chamber stole my thunder, but I wanted to also recognize Tom McLennan, who is not only a Viking North constituent, but of our city councillors at the City of Yellowknife. So thank you, Tom, for being here today.
Thank you, member from Yellowknife North. Member from Yellowknife Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives great pleasure to recognize through you to the House. I have several guests to acknowledge. First of all, I'd like to recognize Todd Cook. He happens to be the president and CEO of Northview Residential REIT. He's up there in the gallery. Sitting next to him is Lene Frida. I believe she's the vice president of operations, and she's there as well. And next to her is a face many of us will know around this room, but certainly in the community. It's Ms. Colleen Wellborn. She is the local, so the Northern Regional Director here for Northview. And I want to give thanks quickly to Ms. Wellborn for her use and support of a community organization with Tony Folio, where they brought clothes from the South Slave to Yellowknife, and they facilitated that and made sure that NGOs could benefit from that situation. Thank you, Northview REITs, and certainly Colleen. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, I want to point out that every time my good colleague on my side, the member for Range Lake, sounds like he knows what he's talking about, well, there is the source of all the brilliance in that relationship. Thank you very much.
Thank you, member from Yellowknife Centre. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'd like to recognize the source of my brilliance, as my colleague said, and my favorite constituent, my lovely wife, Colleen Wellborn.
Here, here.
Thank you, member from Range Lake. Member, recognition of visitors of the gallery. Member from Deitcho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to recognize the Danajati translators here from the region. In the House are Sarah Gargan and Mary Jane Kazon, and to thank them for their contribution to keep the language alive. Merci.
Thank you, member from the Deitcho. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Member from Frame Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do want to address a small technicality on the recognition of visitors gallery today and congratulate Councillor Tom McLennan on his purchase of a new home in the Frame Lake ride. Very excited to welcome him to Frame Lake. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member from Frame Lake. Recognition of visitors in gallery. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Acknowledgements. Acknowledgements. Oral questions. Member from Yellowknife. Oral questions. Member from Yellowknife Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate it very much. Mr. Speaker, my question will be directed to the Minister of Finance regarding most recent bid on the liquor operations here in Yellowknife. Mr. Speaker, a local bidder had bid on this project, and their scoring seems to be quite subjective. I wrote an email because of significant urgency on this. By the time they close this contract, we don't want it to turn into a legal problem. Mr. Speaker, by way of example, under Northern Experience, they got 50 out of 50, Mr. Speaker, but under local BIP, they got 1.8 out of 50, and under NWT BIP, they got 5 out of 150 people, Mr. Speaker. There are some mysterious concerns with these numbers, and I wish some urgency. Would the Minister pause this awarding of this particular contract to ensure these numbers are correct and all the numbers are correct? Thank you.
Member from Yellowknife Centre, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we did acknowledge the email that I got this morning from the member, and thank you for bringing this to my attention. As with any other procurement matter, I'm not going to be putting these details on the floor of the House. I have already tasked the department to look into it, and when we do get a matter where there's some concerns around a procurement scoring, much like a human resource matter, there are avenues and channels by which we can have our staff review it, can have it go through a review, and certainly until that's been done, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to be in a position to say one way or the other what may have happened or didn't happen or did happen, but I can say that we will review this urgently. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Finance. Member from Yellowknife Centre.
Mr. Speaker, although I would like to influence the outcome, that's not my question. My question is about pausing this to ensure there's a rigorous review before an awarding of a contract, so there will be no necessity for legal action to work their way through this, because as I highlighted, the details are a little questionable. Would the minister clarify for the House that she'll ensure the official awarding of the contract won't be done until there's a rigorous review of the numbers and their calculations? Thank you.
From the only centre, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do appreciate the advocacy on behalf of constituents. Certainly want to ensure that our procurement review or procurement processes are accurate and fair. We are subject to procurement processes that maintain our obligations under trade, our obligations for open procurement. And Mr. Speaker, I'm simply not in a position here today to say where we are at in this particular procurement process. I don't have it in front of me. As I said, this came in this morning. Happy to have it brought to my attention. It's not the first time I've had one procurement brought to my attention. But it's gone to the Procurement Shared Services now, and it really is not one that I want to be interfering with on the floor of the House. I recognize it's an important issue for many residents, and so I want to assure them again that we've sent it forward to procurement to make sure that it's done, that any award is done fairly, and that any review is done fairly. Thank you.
For Finance. Final supplementary, member from Only Centre.
Mr. Speaker, all the minister would have to say is that she'll issue an email or instructions or whatever language she wants to use. I don't care. It's fine. I'm fine with that. That she'll issue some awareness that they need to ensure before they officially award the contract that these numbers are reviewed, because it's taken 4 months in January to now for them to find out the details of why they weren't successful. Would she be willing to issue that direction to ensure it's issued in the most fair and reasonable way? Thank you.
Member from the Only Centre, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the intention around fairness. Mr. Speaker, I don't have the details of the procurement here in front of me, as I normally wouldn't. That is a level of operations that ministers would be inappropriate to get my hands involved in, and certainly not here. So again, I do appreciate the concern for fairness. I certainly can commit that I'll double down on saying to the department that we want to ensure that we are being fair and that we are maintaining and adhering to all of the procurement principles that we have. But beyond that, Mr. Speaker, I'm certainly not going to be here on the floor of the House and without a fulsome awareness of the procurement details issuing any directives to the department on this one. I will commit to the member that we all will follow up as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Minister of Finance. Oral questions. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, since the news broke of the potential contamination in the Range Lake North School, my constituents have reached out to me who are nearby in the neighborhood, very concerned about the quality of their own drinking water. Can the Minister of Education just reassure my constituents that there is no risk to contamination in the wider Range Lake neighborhood? Thank you.
Hear,
hear. Member from Range Lake, Minister of Education, Culture and Employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have received information that the City of Yellowknife does regular testing of their water, and there is no concern. Thank you.
Minister of Education, Culture and Employment. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, constituents are also wondering why we haven't historically tested schools for safe drinking water. Can the minister explain why this has been a pilot project and not just ongoing work for the department? Thank you.
Member from Range Lake, Minister of Education, Culture and Employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I certainly, as a parent, share the concerns of many residents of the City of Yellowknife, as well as the residents of the Northwest Territories. Mr. Speaker, it is worth me saying right now that I was notified of this project and the results on Monday evening. Immediately from there was able to ensure that drinking water and cooking water was no longer able to be used within those schools that were advised were experiencing concerns. Mr. Speaker, I can also advise this House and the member that given the extreme concern with this situation, that I have provided direction to the GNWT, because it is multiple departments, and through the Premier's office to do a third-party investigation so we can understand the details of how we got here and how we're going to ensure that we are moving forward in a fulsome way. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Education, Culture and Employment. Final supplementary. Member from Range Lake.
Yellowknife Range Link. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to hear that. I know the minister's taking this seriously. I have no reason to doubt that. My intention is to get the information out to my constituents. But if they do come back and find a problem with the school, who's going to pay for that? Will the minister provide funds to replace whatever needs to be replaced to ensure there's safe, clean drinking water for the kids in my riding? Thank you.
Here, safe water.
Thank you, member from Range Lake. Minister of Education, Culture and Employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the schools in Yellowknife are interesting in that they are different from schools across the territory. So the schools in Yellowknife, for the most part, are owned by the education body themselves, but we have mechanisms to work together within the city of Yellowknife. First and foremost, we need to ensure that the water in our schools is safe and that kids in our schools are safe. And so, as per usual, I will continue to work with our education bodies. I have a very close working relationship with the chair, and we will continue to work forward on this. Thank you.
Minister of Education, Culture, Employment. Members, oral questions. Member from Nuvik-Boot Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, following up on my member statement today regarding the recent work done by the Department of ECC on the developing materials for the Indigenous governments around land leasing. My first question for the Minister of ECC is, how would the department, I guess, define Indigenous traditional use cabins and who they are for?
Nuvik-Boot Lake, Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. I think that, as we talk about traditional use cabins, traditional use activities, traditional use of the land across the NWT, it's important, first and foremost to identify that as the minister and I stand here, it's not my place to identify how an Indigenous government or an Indigenous organizations defined what a traditional use cabin or what their traditions entail amongst the Indigenous governments and Indigenous organizations. There are many differences in tradition and how they define lifestyle and how things were done by their ancestors. What I will commit to standing here is to work with all of those Indigenous governments and Indigenous organizations to ensure as we move forward the policies and the work that we do together is informed by those traditions and that we respect those in the path that we take. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Member from Nuvik-Boot Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And that's a good answer, Mr. Speaker. And I know that the minister is well aware of what's happening here and what needs to be done and the length of time it's taken many years to get to where we are today. Following up on that, Mr. Speaker, one of the things that come out of the forum was the develop follow-up materials for Indigenous governments. Can the minister speak to the timeline now as when we're going to follow up on that and indeed continue this consultation, get that information out to Indigenous governments? Thank you.
Thank you. Member from Nuvik-Boot Lake, Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to report that the work has started. It's well underway. As the member indicated, there was a meeting on the 20th and 21st of May that was very well attended with some really good work done by all participants. There was also a follow-up meeting this morning, actually, between ECC and the Technical Working Group to again advance this initiative. And ECC is working very close with the Technical Working Group through the Intergovernmental Council on Land and Resource Management and under the development protocol to amend the NWT Act and regulations. So this work is very collaborative. We're very committed to following a process that is really working together to ensure that all of our interests are represented at the end of the day, and that they are truly informed by the traditional knowledge within the Northwest Territories. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Final supplementary. Member from Nuvik-Boot Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to the Minister. I think we're starting to see a little light at the end of the tunnel here, and I know it's going to take a continued commitment from the Minister to keep pushing this issue forward and getting this work done. Final question, Mr. Speaker. You mentioned the amendments to the Northwest Territories land regulations. Do we have a timeline for that? Has the department come up with a schedule and a timeline to get these amendments done so we can move this forward? Thank you.
From Nunavut Lake, Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the member pointed out, we have committed to, trying to reduce the rent to a nominal fee or $1 in the short term, as well as ensure that we're addressing this in the long term. Right now, currently, the way the legislation is written, we can't technically charge rent less than $150. So that's really our short-term goal here, is to address that. And as we work with our partners, giving a specific timeline to this process is difficult. There are many participants here. If I could, I'd be happy to do that tomorrow. But we have a process and a protocol that we follow to ensure that all the voices are heard. And I again just wanted to reiterate my commitment to get this done certainly as quickly as we can. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Environment and Climate Change. Oral questions. Member from Toonaday-Willety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I got my treaty book here. I highlighted areas in terms of education, and education is a treaty right. And so
that it's a prop. Okay, thank you. Member from Toonaday-Willety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of ECE is traveling to Ottawa next week to meet with her federal counterparts. Would she use this opportunity to advocate to restore these recent cuts to the Jordan Principle program before they come into place with our new MP, who's now the Minister of Crown and Indigenous Relations? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Toonaday-Willety. Minister of Education, Culture, Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I share the member's concern, and the answer is yes.
Thank you, Minister of Education, Culture, and Employment. Member from Toonaday-Willety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If these cuts to Jordan Principles go forward and it eliminates tens of millions of dollars from Indigenous students, will the minister commit to working with working with affected community school boards and First Nations to restore this critical funding over the summer? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Toonaday-Willety. Minister of Education, Culture, and Employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have a close working relationship with our education bodies. I meet with them multiple times a year. I'm meeting with them again in June. This has been a conversation on our agenda all year. It is a huge concern for both education bodies and myself. Those conversations will continue. This conversation has also happened with the NWTTA. Mr. Speaker, one thing that needs to be very clear here is the GNWT cannot afford to take on the programs that the federal government introduces and does not continue. When this program was introduced, and over the last number of years, officials at the Department of Education have reiterated to officials within the federal government that we cannot afford to take on this program should they choose not to continue it. So that is why the Minister of Health and Social Services and I are teaming up together to deliver this message to Ottawa. That is why I have teamed up as well with education ministers from the Yukon and also from Nunavut, because this has an impact on Indigenous people across this country and across all three territories. Thank you.
Member of Education, Culture, and Employment. Final supplementary. Member from Toonaday-Willety.
Mr. Speaker, Jordan Principle exists to close the gap in the standard of living between Indigenous and non-Indigenous children. Every dollar it provides to our schools is in effect an acknowledgement by the federal government that the needs have to be met by our own territorial government. What has the Department of ECC allowed our schools to become so resilient on this federal program, and what's their backup plan should they provide this program doesn't go ahead? Thank you.
Thank you, member from Toonaday-Willety. Minister of Education, Culture, and Employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, within our school funding formula, we have accounted within the Department of Education, Culture and Employment for different positions within schools. The federal government, with their program, accounted for putting other positions in schools that were different from the method of supporting schools that ECE had in place. So, for example, there was program support teachers that are funded through Education, Culture and Employment. Those program support teachers are funded through our Inclusive Schooling Directive, and already last year we have jump-started the process of reviewing our Inclusive Schooling Directive to make sure that we are doing this work properly, and that work is already underway. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Education, Culture, Employment. Oral questions. Member for Moultrie.
Merci, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you. It's good to see my two pagers in here, Nikolai and Shiloh. Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister of Housing explain what specific plans are in place to ensure transitional housing and wrap-around supports like those offered in Yellowknife are extended to small communities across the NWT? Thank you.
Member for Moultrie. Minister responsible for Housing and NWT.
Mr. Speaker, I was waiting for you to. And that's okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. Transitional housing and wraparound supports, it's required all across the Northwest Territories. Looking at our waiting list, looking at Betcheko, we have over 130 families waiting for housing. In your member statement, you indicated some applicants may wait their entire lifetime for housing. So the work we do at housing, the money that this Legislative Assembly has approved over the next number of years, the federal engagement piece, the working with the cabinet, the federal cabinet, working with the new federal housing ministers, these are the conversations we're going to have. This is the vision that we have. This is a priority of this Assembly. So continued good work and advocacy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister responsible for Housing and NWT. Member for Moultrie.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that the $2 million federal territorial funding for transitional housing is limited, how does the minister plan to prioritize or supplement this funding to meet the urgent need for temporary housing with wraparound support in regions like Cleacho?
Thank you. From Moultrie. Minister responsible for Housing and NWT.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my most recent visit to Betcheko, and hopefully going into Wati over the summer, I see the need going into the communities, looking at what people need in communities to survive, and transitional housing is one of those pieces, including shelter space, including warming shelter space, including transitional housing, including our THARP, including public housing, including market housing. So there's a huge need in the housing continuum across the north, and the Cleacho region is one of those regions and ridings that need housing. And again, we have to look at this on a territorial basis. We have 32 communities in the Northwest Territories that we provide public and social housing to. So these are the decisions we make, and hopefully the plan over the next 3 years will encompass that decision. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister responsible for Housing and NWT. Final supplementary. Member from Moultrie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, can the minister say how the department is working with other GNWT departments like Health and Social Services and with Indigenous government to expand programs like Northern Pathways to Housing and ensure they include long-term social supports for residents with addictions? Thank you.
Minister responsible for Housing and NWT.
In this cabinet, we are discussing housing all the time with the different departments, including Justice and Health, and Education, Culture and Employment, and Infrastructure, and then with Finance and our Premier involved constantly. Housing is a priority of this government. We work towards that. How do we move ahead? That's important. So we need to have plans in place, including transitional housing in all communities. But how do we get there? We need to get the funding and supports working alongside Indigenous governments who are receiving distinction-based funding through the federal earned funding. So these are engagements that we have at the Council of Leaders, engagements we have in bilateral discussions and face-to-face discussions and phone calls and conversations that we continue to press the need for housing in our communities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Minister responsible for Housing and LBT. Oral questions. Member from Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance knows that I love data. So can the Minister tell us when an annual report for 2024, which is required by the Insurance Act, will be made public? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Great Slave, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The insurance license year ends June 30th, so the June 30th, 2024 would be the end of that year. The annual report is then prepared thereafter. We would expect the 2024 annual report that gets prepared through the year will then be released in October or so, or the fall of this year. So roughly fall of 2025. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Finance. Member from Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for that. Can the Minister say whether the 2023 annual report, which is already out, takes increases resulting from claims made during the 23 wildfires and evacuations into its calculations for gross receivable insurance premiums? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Great Slave, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is correct. It does. The insurer's premium tax that gets paid to the GNWT does take into account any increases in total gross premiums for the calendar year. So the premium tax, it's 3% on general insurance, 1% on fire insurance, and that is indeed based on the previous calendar year's insurance premiums. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Finance. Final supplementary. Member from Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The superintendent reports on 4 previous years in each annual report. Can the minister speak to what percentage increases to insurance premiums that the superintendent is tracking for 24 or even into 2025? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Great Slave, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, the March 2023 or March 2025 year has not yet been completed, Mr. Speaker, but the 2024 amounts are still being finalized, and I can give you an estimate that we're sitting at around 6.9 million. That would be a 3.6% decrease from the 2023 reported premium tax. As I said earlier, we are now tabulating 2024. 2025 will be reported in a year, just under a year from now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Finance. Oral questions. Member from Frame Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Continuing on the insurance theme, can the minister tell us if the Office of the Superintendent of Insurance has received complaints from homeowners and or businesses that they are essentially unable to access affordable insurance? Thank you.
Thank you, member from Frame Lake. Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The current Superintendent of Insurance has been in the role since December of 2022, and I am able to say that they have not, they have informed me that they've not received any complaints from homeowners or businesses about being unable to access insurance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Finance. Member from Frame Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Part of me wonders if that's whether they are even aware of the office. Mr. Speaker, since 2021, what specifically has the Department of Finance done to investigate having a Crown corporation like SGI Canada provide affordable home and fire insurance in the NWT, and how would this be regulated? Thank you.
From Frame Lake, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This was a question that came up, I believe, in the last Assembly, if not earlier as well, and I can say that the Department of Finance was asked and did reach out to counterparts in Saskatchewan to better understand the SGI model, to learn whether or not it could be applicable here or brought about to the Northwest Territories. Obviously, as a fairly small jurisdiction, very small population, and very small revenue base, creating a program of insurance would be next to impossible, as it would not give a sufficient base of paying in order to be able to pay out. So in that sense, having our own Crown Corporation is not financially feasible. So as far as being regulated, I mean, certainly the insurance industry continues to be regulated here. Mr. Speaker, as far as the private market, certainly, again, the private market can choose whether or not to come into the jurisdiction, and that is not something that we can sort of force or require any particular private actor to come in or not. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Finance, final supplementary. Member from Frame Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that the suggestion is not necessarily that we establish our own Crown Corporation, but could SGI be brought in, as they've done in other provinces, to provide insurance in the Northwest Territories and thereby give Northwest Territories access to a larger base, the way we do for some other things. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Frame Lake, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, I wasn't personally privy to the conversations with SGI, but did follow up to get some information as to what came of those conversations. It was a couple of years ago now, but I can say at the time that their indication is that they don't have any interest right now in coming into the Northwest Territories market, nor do any of their brokers have any interest at this point, from what they're informed of, to coming into the Northwest Territories market. Mr. Speaker, although, again, I can't really speak for an entity from another jurisdiction, the sense from the Department of Finance is that, again, the population here is quite small, so that makes the market very small. There's going to be very little economies of scale, very little returns, very little incentive to bring this entity here. Moreover, the payouts, because we are often in isolated communities, payouts can often be a lot higher. And so all of which leads both SGI as the parent and as well as the broker and perhaps also others to not have any incentive to come into this market. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Finance. Oral questions. Member from Decho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions are for the Minister for NTPC. Can the Minister explain whether there is currently a plan in place to supply power to Fort Providence and Kakisa from the Tolston Hydro Project? Thank you.
Member from the Decho, Minister responsible for NTPC.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is actually a GNWT project, and so in that sense, there is a plan. There certainly is a strong desire to see an opportunity to run a transmission line from just outside of Hay River through past Kakisa and up into Fort Providence. That represents that extra bit would represent about 15% of our total emissions, and obviously a significant reduction on reliance of diesel, which has very volatile prices to the residents in those regions. So that there is this plan in the way. It already has regulatory approval to get to constructions. We have an application in with the federal government for funding. Mr. Speaker, one thing is we are still having some positive conversations with our friends at Naka Power. They are the distributing agent in Fort Providence and also in Kakisa, and so it's important that we discuss with them how we are going to find a way to put all this together, knowing that we don't, as GNWT or NTPC, own all of that infrastructure. So that is a conversation we've had not too long ago, and I will be following up with them so we can move the project along. Thank you.
I think now you're saying you're the Minister responsible for strategic infrastructure, energy, and supply chain. So, member from Decho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will any of the work for projects in the region lead to the creation of new jobs within NTPC? Thank you.
Thank you, member from Decho. Minister responsible for strategic infrastructure, energy, and supply chains.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can say we're right now bringing what was a sort of 60% design project up to a higher level of certainty, and with that would come more of the analysis on whether or not there are any further opportunities. There is already, obviously, the distribution network within these communities, which is, as I said, one that has Naka Power there, and I don't know whether they have any staff based in the communities or not, and I don't expect this would change that. When there are lines running, that certainly has the possibility that there may be some linesmen required to be available. Whether or not there would be a sufficient demand for these extra lines to create positions or not, again, I can't say at this point. We would do that part of the analysis when the project comes forward with some finality. I would say, Mr. Speaker, that having more reliable, more sustainable, and hopefully more affordable energy does benefit the community and can certainly, if that brings costs down, hopefully spur some business activity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Strategic Infrastructure, Energy and Supply Chain. Final supplementary. Member from Decho.
Thank you, merci, Mr. Speaker. She probably answered a little bit of this, but I need it to be on the, say it again. Can the minister say whether this work is dependent on applications for federal funding or more part of our government's budget initiatives? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Decho, Minister responsible for Strategic Infrastructure, Energy and Supply Chain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are waiting to hear back from the federal government. We do have an application in for the full funding. The importance of having 100% public dollars on this is that means that it doesn't go on the ratepayers. It doesn't add to people's costs of power, which of course are, as I said earlier today, the highest in Canada. So it's very important as the minister responsible that we are not putting this on the backs of ratepayers, even though we want to ensure they have sustainable and reliable energy. We don't want people to be paying for costs that they just can't be paying these extra costs, even in the face of needing the infrastructure. So it is very important that we get the 100% dollars, and that application, as I said, is in. The other issue again is that we find a path forward with our friends at NACA, so that we are working together with them and ensuring a collaborative path forward for an asset, again, that is their distribution franchise, but our transmission opportunity or our generation asset, and I'm confident that we will find that path forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Strategic Infrastructure, Energy and Supply Chains. Oral questions. Member from the Satu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following up on my statement, my questions is to the Minister responsible for infrastructure, energy and supply chains. My first question there, Mr. Speaker, what work is the GWT doing so that this project, or the Mackenzie Valley Highway, is ready to be one of the projects the federal government is describing as a nation-building project? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Two, Minister responsible for Strategic Infrastructure, Energy and Supply Chain. We got to come up with a shorter acronym. Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've had to practice it several times, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the question. There's a lot of work that is happening. We are still, of course, actively involved with our MOU partners, and together with them are reviewing an update to the business plan, to a final business plan, so we can have that ready to go with, obviously the business plan is an advocacy document, but it also updates the final costing. We are working through the final remaining information requests. I believe at last count we were well over 400, and we are down to the last few. We did ask for a short extension on a few of them so that we could work with the community of Ridley and the Pedzakay First Nation on some of the information they have provided. I had the opportunity to travel there just earlier this month and had very positive engagement with the community to ensure that they are properly being reflected in the proposed project. With those two things in hand, Mr. Speaker, that will allow, or with the business case, and then with the project proceeding through the board and through the board process, my understanding is that we are still on track for the work plan to have the EA done this year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister responsible for Strategic Infrastructure, Energy and Supply Chains. Member from the Satu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the Minister for that information update. I can see my constituents are getting very happy. I see the smiles. My next question is, will the GWT work with the communities of the Satu so that they are ready for this project? Merci.
Member from the Satu. Minister responsible for Strategic Infrastructure, Energy and Supply Chain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely, Mr. Speaker, and I will say one important thing that's come on this project is that very typically departments do community readiness working plans on large-scale infrastructure projects and would typically do them a year or so out from construction. Mr. Speaker, the communities in the Sawtooth have been very clear they want that work starting now. And so I can say we have put an application into the federal government to realign some of the ISEP money that is supporting the Mackenzie Valley Highway so that we can get the working groups for these readiness working groups up and running immediately and not wait till we're just at the construction stage. We want to get that work started now, and my hope is we'll hear back. Now that there's a government, my hope is we'll hear back and that we can get that work going so that the communities are ready well in advance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're responsible for strategic infrastructure, energy, and supply chain. Final supplementary, member from Wasattu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very glad for the continuous good news here. It's going to be an enjoyable weekend. Will the minister show Ottawa how critical this road is to connect the people of the Sahtu to the rest of Canada? Thank you.
From the Sahtu, minister responsible for strategic infrastructure, energy, and supply chain.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, yes. Mr. Speaker, I've always had at least some introductory calls with counterparts in Ottawa, and I can say, I'm happy to say that I already raised the Mackenzie Valley Highway as being a nation-building project, connecting a critical part of Canada that is right now unconnected from the rest of Canada. Multiple communities, an entire segment of this country has no connections on roads, and if we can't get barges in because of climate change, no connections really whatsoever other than by air. We can't have that. That's not Canada of the future. It's not the building Canada that we are hearing the federal government talking about. So yes, we will be in Ottawa. In fact, member might have a nice weekend. I'm flying this weekend, and I'm flying to Ottawa, and I will take this message with me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Responsible for strategic infrastructure, energy, and supply chain. Oral questions. Member from Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions are for the Minister of Executive and Indigenous Affairs. So, following challenges around the encampment last summer in the middle of the city of Yellowknife, I know that the GNBT has been working hard throughout the winter to establish better relationships with shelter providers, to get to know members of the unhoused population and their specific needs, and to get new transitional housing initiatives off the ground. However, it's unclear whether there was any specific planning around what to do about any future encampments, and now we have new encampments at locations popping up within the city of Yellowknife. And so I understand that the average occupancy rate at Yellowknife shelters has been only 87% since last October. But was the GNWT operating on the assumption that given adequate shelter space, there would be no encampments to deal with in the city this summer? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yellowknife North, Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the member's correct. We did take a number of steps to ensure there were enough shelter beds. And so that was funding NGOs to increase the number of shelter beds. We had the on-the-land transitional housing program running for a couple months in the winter. We hoped to already have a transitional housing set up for this summer, but it's been delayed a little bit. So between the shelter space increase and the transitional housing increase, we were hoping to be able to address any shortfall that we have in spaces, beds. That being said, people are going to do what they're going to do, and some people would rather stay in a tent, and they are going to set up that tent and stay in there even if there are beds available. So I was never under the impression that we would have no encampments ever again in the territory, even if we had all of the adequate space that we needed. So I would say the assumption was not that there would be no encampments. Thank you.
Mr. Premier, member from Yellowknife North.
Thanks to the Minister for that answer. So now that we have better awareness that encampments are not necessarily related to a shortage of shelter space per se, but perhaps shortages in the broader housing continuum or people's preference for how they want to live, is the GNBT preparing to do some longer-term planning around identifying some specific suitable space for an encampment in consultation with neighbours? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
From Yellowknife North. Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, as I mentioned yesterday, understanding that even with adequate space there will be encampments, we want to ensure that where those encampments might set up are places that are not disruptive to neighbourhoods. And so we are looking at different locations around the city and trying to figure out where might be an appropriate location. And then the plan is to try and work with those at the encampments and their legal representatives to try and relocate them to a more suitable location. Thank you.
Final supplementary, member from Yonley North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So we have heard from the lawyer spokesperson for the encampment residents that they've been looking for advice or direction from the GNWT as to which lots or specific areas might be suitable. So has the GNWT already given such advice as to what specific areas might be off limits or what specific lots might be preferable to the current encampment residents? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member from Yonley North. Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There have been discussions. I'm not. I'd have to get back to the member to find out if, a specific address was provided, but those conversations have begun. Thank you.
Oral questions. Member from Yonley Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the similar topic or same topic as the previous speaker, I don't share her points of view very closely, although I do share the humanity of the issue. I want to say that undoubtedly. Mr. Speaker, I feel that what's important to stress before I get to my question is I may be critical of this government, but at times defined as feisty, but I feel something's being missed in this articulation. To imply that there isn't shelter options or the shelters are full, there isn't to imply there's treatment or counseling supports aren't available, there's food available for the record, there's beds for available. Certainly, Mr. Speaker, and there's facilities. Mr. Speaker, what is the major holdup of identifying spaces for these folks to move to so the residents are no longer in a situation that they feel unsafe? So what's the delay in identifying these safe spaces that these people can be parked into? Thank you.
Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's no delay. The work is happening right now. Thank you.
Mr. Premier. Member from Yonley Centre.
Mr. Speaker, what is the plan to communicate this to members and the public, and is there a way to get this sorted out before the weekend? Because we have them stealing fences now, and it's been reported to the RCMP. I have a phone number. Mr. Speaker, is there a way to get this into action before the weekend, before more destruction and safety become compromised? Thank you.
Yonley Centre. Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not. I haven't been part of those conversations with the legal representatives. I haven't actually gone down to the encampment and spoken with the folks there. So I can't tell the member or the House what their desire is to move at this point. Maybe they have no plans to move, and even if we had a great spot for them, they wouldn't want to go. So I can't make any commitment about what a private citizen is going to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Final supplementary. Member from Yonley Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm not really hearing the government wants to do anything other than wait. Is the plan to wait and sit this out, or is the plan to actually engage and try to put better options on the table so businesses, the community will feel safe again, Mr. Speaker, and a responsible place for them to go could be quickly identified on NWT lands? Will the Premier step up, maybe even meet with these people and to have this conversation? Thank you.
Member from Yonley Centre. Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'll answer one of the questions in there. So what's happening now is that the different entities who are involved in this are meeting. Government of the Northwest Territories, the City of Yellowknife, the RCMP, a number of different organizations are all meeting. Everyone is coordinating, putting their mind towards this issue. We are looking at more suitable locations and then working with the folks at the encampment and their legal representatives to try and relocate to those suitable locations. And we're identifying any other barriers that might exist, any other reasons why people might be setting up encampments and why they might not be moving those encampments. So all of that work is happening. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Premier. Oral questions. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I said in my member statement, I was contacted by two very distraught seniors who were charged full price for over-the-counter medicine that should have been covered by supplementary and extended health benefits. I'd like to ask the Minister of Health and Social Services why this was the case. Thank you.
Member from Range Lake. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if there was charges to anyone who was on senior health benefits that was charged for over-the-counter drugs, I would suggest them reach out to my office or to their MLA, because those charges shouldn't, before, I'll clarify, shouldn't have been charged under what was going to be proposed, but after I looked at it further and began to kind of pull it apart a little bit, when I asked the questions as to why these changes in pharmaceuticals were being changed and why we were getting these emails from seniors, because it was extended health benefits. We try to keep in line all of our benefits, and so there are some changes that ends up happening with NIHB, and the pharmaceutical things change all the time. And so I did stop it, and as the member has said, that I would be looking into it. I'm not necessarily saying that it's going to affect seniors. What I'm saying is that we are looking at what change made that was actually going to implement, why it was going to impact seniors, and how are we doing this across the equitable lens of NIHB, Métis benefits, and our extended benefits, because my understanding is those are all supposed to be the same, except for with the hierarchy of the income testing on the extended health benefits. So if there are charges to seniors, please reach out, because those shouldn't have been charged. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Health and Social Services, member from Rangeley.
Thank you, and I want to recognize the minister did stop it, and I thank her for that. But Mr. Speaker, why did these happen in the first place if they were only being looked at? Why was this implemented and then rolled back? Is this a case of a runaway department, or is the minister making these decisions herself? Thank you.
Rangeley, Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what I would like to say is the benefit pharmacy, I don't know how to say it very easily without a lot of words in this time, because our extended health benefits is multiple programs together. So pharmacy goes through Alberta, and there is the changes that were made, and they implement our senior benefits and our extended health benefits and our Métis benefits. But for each program, they're supposed to be simultaneously done. The one thing that they were looking at under restoring balance was how do we, if there's changes to over-the-counter drugs, if they're in other areas, then they should all fall in line. And then when that came back, there were some changes in some. Then because of the way that it goes through Alberta Blue Cross, it went across the board, which it shouldn't have, because things are they're all different within their system. So I needed to have more clarity of why that happened. We do not administer the Blue Cross. We give them the information, and they're supposed to do this. So that's why I stopped it. It shouldn't have affected the senior benefits. After further looking at it and having more conversations, one of the things that I did ask is, why are we being charged so much when it looks like there's 63% of the fees of the over-the-counter charges are for pharmacy services? So on a $3 prescription of something, we're being charged an extra $15 for that. So how can we do it different so that these are over-the-counter drugs? How can we do it different that we're not having to pay that much cost? And then, so looking at the cost of it, I just said, let's just stop it. We'll do more investigation as to what went wrong with the senior benefits, and just ensuring that all of our other benefits are streamlined across, so that way it's not affecting anybody inequitably. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Health and Social Services, final supplementary, member from Rangeley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, will the Minister of Health and Social Services give Northern seniors her word that there will be no increases to seniors' benefits, no cuts to seniors' benefits for as long as she is minister?
Hear, hear, no cut.
Thank you, member from Rangeley, Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as long as I am the minister, there will be no changes to the senior benefits. As all of the benefits that are on the table. Like I said, even with the extended benefits, those changes, we're going to be doing the review, so those discussions will happen later on this winter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Health and Social Services. Oral questions, member for Mophie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Seniors aging in place. Mr. Speaker, helping NWTs live independently at home for as long as possible is important. We know that. My neighbor in Betchacon lived at home to the wonderful age of 99 years old. We call her Mama Cho. Housing NWT has a senior aging in place program with funding available for residents 60 and older to lower home energy costs or to do home repairs. So one of the questions, Mr. Speaker, one of the requirements for seniors aging in place funding is that the resident owns a home. Can the minister outline what specific policies are in place to lower home energy costs or to complete repairs for elders who are currently renting housing NWT units or do not yet own a home? Thank you.
Minister responsible for housing NWT.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. Housing NWT has various housing programs, housing assistance programs to help those that need to upgrade their home, renovate their home, have their home become more energy efficient. There's different type of programs like the Senior Aging in Place. We have a mobility program. We have an emergency repair program. We have a number of different programs that are advertised throughout the Northwest Territories. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister responsible for housing NWT. Member for Moultrie.
Mr. Speaker, can the minister say how long elders are waiting for housing? And is NWT Housing developing any rent-to-own program for elders? Thank you.
For Moultrie. Minister responsible for housing NWT.
Mr. Speaker, that's a difficult question because the seniors are encompassed in the entire public housing program. So the local housing organizations manage our public housing program through the Community Housing Services Agreement. So that encompasses all communities and all population, all ages, including seniors. So that's very important to highlight. And in terms of seniors aging in place, again, like transitional housing, the question she asked earlier, this is something that is needed throughout the Northwest Territories because seniors are looking for proper accommodations to age in place in their community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister responsible for housing NWT. Final supplementary. Member for Moultrie.
Okay, thank you. So what is the difference between Seniors Aging in Place program and the Seniors Home Repair programs, and are there any comparable programs for elders renting a unit? Who are you renting? Thank you.
Member for Moultrie. Minister Housing NWT.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, the Seniors Home Repair Program and the Senior Aging in Place Program, these are complementary programs that Housing NWT offers throughout the Northwest Territories. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister responsible for housing NWT. Oral questions. Member from Frame Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Premier some questions related to mandate implementation. In particular, can the Premier provide me with an update on the mandate commitment to better streamline administrative processes, policies, and legislation across government to enhance the capacity of the public service to work better together? What actions to date have been taken to implement this commitment? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Frame Lake. Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It might not sound like a big question, but that's a big question. We're talking about a culture change in the government, really, and how we do business across government. But I'm happy to report that there are a number of initiatives underway. I'll just start with something simple. Sometimes streamlining just means defining roles, so people actually know what their role is relative to other departments, and enabling departments to work together with that understanding. And so one thing that we have started doing is creating project charters when there is an initiative that cuts across different departments. That way it brings departments together, they all know what they're doing, and no one's duplicating efforts, and everyone's in the know. So that's one thing that we are bringing in slowly to help acclimatize everyone to it. We are developing new artificial intelligence guidelines because the future of administration is going to rely heavily on artificial intelligence. And so that is going to assist employees with their work. So we're working with other governments, coordinating, looking at best practices, and really all governments in Canada. They're at this project is at its infancy everywhere. And so we're really working on the same timelines as other governments. We're making amendments to the Public Service Act to update the legislation to reflect current practices in job evaluation, hiring, and labor relations. We are, one of the things that I'm happy about is that we're reducing the number of strategies and frameworks that we have in the government. I was Minister of ECE for years before I realized that we even had some certain strategies. So clearly those aren't working the way they need to. So by reducing those and streamlining things, we'll become more efficient. I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Premier, member from Frame Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I certainly appreciate that answer, and it sounds like the Premier had more to say, so I would encourage perhaps a more fulsome response in writing. Mr. Speaker, I'd like further an update on the mandate commitment to empower the public service by ensuring they are provided the flexibility to deliver programs and implement policies in ways that best serve residents. Mr. Speaker, can the Premier describe what changes have been implemented in the public service to better empower staff? Thank you.
Member from Frame Lake, Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And so that question really gets to integrated service delivery. And so we are advancing integrated service delivery across the territory. We're starting small. Once again, we don't want to try and do this all at once. We want to learn lessons on how we can better work together and better empower employees to make decisions that are in the best interest of residents and aren't administratively burdensome. So we're establishing regional locations in 5 communities to explore how to reduce the regulatory and policy burden on both the public service and the residents. We're also embarking on an NGO support program, which will empower the public service by identifying internal barriers and streamlining supports to allow residents to focus on healing and making productive choices. So by working with NGOs, we actually become more flexible. There's more ability to do different things compared to us doing it alone as government. So maybe I'll leave it there for now. Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I see the clock ticking.
From Frame Lake, final supplementary. And please be succinct with your question.
Mr. Speaker, when I think of empowering staff, I think about reducing hierarchy and actually empowering staff to make decisions, to implement programs. Can the Speaker talk about how they're reducing hierarchy in the public service? Thank you.
Thank you, member from Frame Lake. I would assume that's going to the Premier, not the Speaker. So, Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So some of these sort of cut across different departments. Maybe the Minister of Finance might be more appropriate to answer that. So what I'll do is I'll tell the member I'll have to get back to him on that one. Thank you.
Oral questions. Member from Great Slave.
Oh, just under the wire, Mr. Speaker. Thank you so much. Mr. Speaker, as folks might be aware, last night 911 services were impacted, and the government put out a press release saying if you're unable to reach your local health clinic or hospital by phone, go in person for any urgent need. Mr. Speaker, that's pretty impossible if you're unable to move, if you're on your own, when every second counts. I have a constituent who works in medical dispatch and wrote me with his alarming concerns. Mr. Speaker, I would like to know what redundancy plans the Minister of MACA is working on so that future service outages don't result in unsafe situations for residents. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Great Slave, Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would assume that the point that we're trying to get across, that if you were looking for help, you could go anywhere that provides the help, like the emergency department, RCMP detachment, or the fire service in your communities to get the help that you need. When the Northwest Tel takes out these lines for their modernization of equipment, it's kind of out of our hands. So, what could be put in place, it's something we can look into, but at the present time, when they take out these services, it knocks down all our communication. So that's part of the problem. So at this time, we could take that back and see if there's an option of providing some kind of service in these times where Northwest Tel does do maintenance on their systems. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs. Member from Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, will the minister then make some plans to have his department investigate what other jurisdictions do to maintain this critical service even during a telecommunications outage? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member from Great Slave, Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Back in the day, pre-cell phones and phones and everything else, we used smoke signals. No, we would have to go back, honestly, and look and find out from the other agencies like in Alberta what they do and how they layer their systems in order to have backups in their systems. So I'll ask the department to see what other jurisdictional scans we can do to see how we can back up our systems when our main telecommunication system is out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs. Final supplementary, member from Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the minister is trying to make some levity, but it is a serious situation. So will the minister commit to work with the Minister of Finance to address this telecoms gap? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Great Slave, Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will commit to working with anybody to try to solve this problem. Like I said, it's Northwest Tel's the one that does the network system. They're the ones that control the telecommunications in the Northwest Territories. Again, we'll look at options. We'll ask the department to do a jurisdictional scan to see what they do for backup systems in other parts of the country. But again, we can work with other departments in order to find out what a solution might be. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs. Colleagues, our time is up for all questions. Mr. Clerk. Nothing? You don't? Okay, sorry. Oral questions. Oral questions. Colleagues, being recognizing the time, we will have a brief break to give the interpreters an opportunity. Thank you. Written questions. Written questions. Returns to written questions. Returns to written questions. Replies to the Commissioner's address. Replies to the Commissioner's address. Petitions. Petitions. Reports of Committee on Review of Bills. Reports of Committee on Review of Bills. Reports on standing and special committees. Member from Rangeley.
Mr. Speaker, your Standing Committee on Public Accounts is pleased to provide its report on the review of the Auditor General's 2024 audit of the Stanton Territorial Hospital Renewal Project and commends it to the House.
From Rangeley. Member from Rangeley.
Mr. Speaker, your standing, Mr. Speaker, Stanton Territorial Hospital in Yellowknife is the NWT's largest healthcare facility, serves residents across the territory and Nunavut's-Kitikmeot region. The original 1988 hospital was replaced on the same site in 2019. The former facility, later named Kliwagunti building in October 2023, was designated for future leasing. On March 11, 2020, members of the Legislative Assembly requested a performance audit to be conducted by the Office of the Auditor General of the Stanton Territorial Hospital Renewal Project, which used a public-private partnership P3 model. The OAG audited the Government of the Northwest Territories, Departments of Finance, Infrastructure, Health and Social Services, and the NWT Health and Social Services Authority to assess whether they fulfilled their responsibilities in the Stanton Territorial Hospital Renewal Project, aka the Stanton Project, and delivered value for money. The audit reviewed project planning, design, construction, selected non-medical operations of the new hospital, and planning and leasing of the legacy facility through document analysis, public records, and stakeholder interviews. The OAG found that the project's original plan to renovate and expand the existing hospital shifted to a full rebuild under a P3 model. However, this major change in scope was not accompanied by a reassessment to confirm whether the P3 still offered greater value than the original request for proposal. Additionally, the OAG found that a 30-year lease agreement for the legacy hospital, initially intended for third-party use, resulted in the government subleasing the building back for its own purposes without required approvals. This made the government a rent-paying tenant in a facility it owns and exposed it to risks that it had intended to transfer. The Standing Committee on Public Accounts has conducted an extensive review of the OAG's report and many of the confidential documents that informed it. Based on this review, committee concludes that the Stanton project was mismanaged throughout its life cycle. From the initial scope change to the final leasing arrangements, the project suffered from weak oversight, inadequate due diligence, and the failure to reassess key financial decisions in light of major changes to the project's scope. The result was a significant cost overrun, with costs rising from an estimated $750 million to $1.21 billion, a $462 million, 62% increase over the originally projected costs reported in 2015 when the project was still under development. This leads committee to conclude that the P3 structure ultimately delivered poor value for money. Taxpayers are now committed to paying rent on a building the government already owns, while assuming long-term risks that were originally intended to be transferred to the private sector. These outcomes reflect systemic failures in planning, procurement, and accountability. Committee found no evidence that any analysis had ever been done by the GNWT to assess the merits of the option to use the legacy hospital building for its own purposes. This is concerning to committee, given that the GNWT was aware that there were known space issues for the delivery of healthcare services prior to the establishment of the lease arrangements. Because the analysis was not done, committee cannot verify that the GNWT achieved value for money in their decision-making. Moreover, because the evidentiary record for conflict of interest declarations is also incomplete, committee can neither verify nor disprove that there were real or perceived conflicts of interest throughout the lifespan of the project. While the GNWT has agreed with most of the OAG's recommendations, committee notes that a number of the responses back to the audit report lack substance. In several places, the GNWT states that it is already aligned with the OAG's recommendations and, quote, no further work is required. Committee disagrees. Given the lack of transparency and failure to demonstrate value for money, committee maintains that the GNWT must do significantly more to show how it will meet the recommendations, including clearly outlining what will change going forward to prevent similar failures and restore the public's confidence in the process. Finally, the OAG recommended that the Department of Finance publicly report comprehensive and timely cost information for the Stanton project as a P3. The reporting should include long-term leasing costs for the Legacy Hospital building and updates for significant cost changes to enhance transparency in public fund use. The Department of Finance disagreed, stating that Legacy Hospital leasing costs are part of a separate project and not applicable to P3 reporting requirements. The department committed to maintaining its current reporting practices through capital estimates and the public accounts. Committee finds this position problematic, as it undermines the spirit of the OAG's recommendations and raises concerns about the adequacy of current reporting practices. The refusal to provide full and integrated cost disclosures limits transparency and diminishes the public's ability to assess value for money. Committee emphasizes that meaningful accountability requires a lot more comprehensive and open approach to financial reporting on public infrastructure projects. In light of committee's review of the OAG's report, committee consequently makes 9 recommendations. Recommendation 1, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories provide a detailed and updated response to each agreed-upon recommendation, clearly outlining specific actions taken, timelines for full implementation, and measurable progress to date. Committee expects this response to demonstrate how future decisions will differ to ensure improved transparency, oversight, and value for money. Recommendation 2, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories implement and publicly disclose robust measures to ensure strict compliance with cost control and conflict of interest policies in the development and execution of large capital projects. Furthermore, the government should clearly demonstrate through transparent reporting, regular audits, and measurable outcomes how these measures will prevent a recurrence of the mismanagement and ethical concerns seen in the Stanton Territorial Hospital Renewal Project. Recommendation 3, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories provide a detailed update on how each component of the OAG's recommendation has been implemented in practice. This should include specific actions taken, timelines, and clear explanations of how future procurement processes will differ to ensure strong oversight, conflict of interest management, and public confidence. Recommendation 4, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts recommends the Government of the Northwest Territories provide clear, demonstrable evidence of how procurement processes have been improved and how lessons from the Stanton Territorial Hospital Renewal Project have been applied to improve future procurement processes. This should include documented examples of how bidder communications are now consistently recorded, how equal access to information is ensured, and what mechanisms are in place to monitor compliance and enforce accountability across departments. Recommendation 5, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories establish a threshold as defined by cost, complexity, or risk, and appoint an internal auditor under the Comptroller General or other qualified expert to oversee and scrutinize a project that exceeds these thresholds. Recommendation 6, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories adopt the most comprehensive and transparent approach possible for reporting public-private partnerships in the capital estimates and public accounts as part of the forthcoming updates to public sector accounting standards and financial reporting requirements. Committee further recommends that the GNWT provide a public update outlining the new approach for P3s and clearly demonstrate how it will meet enhanced standards for transparency, accountability, and fiscal clarity prior to the release of the 2024-25 public accounts. Recommendation 7, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories either classify Stanton Legacy Project as P3, which was originally procured as a P3 project, or establish in the financial statement discussion and analysis in the public accounts the point in time when this ceased to be the case. Recommendation 8, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories publicly release sufficient financial and contractual information to substantiate claims that the lease of the Legacy Hospital building represents value for money, including the basis of the reported 30% discount relative to market rates. Recommendation 9, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories provide a response to this report within 120 days. Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Nunakput, that the remainder of Committee Report 24-20(1) Standing Committee on Public Accounts report on the review of the Auditor General's 2024 audit of the Stanton Territorial Hospital Renewal Project be deemed read and printed in Hansard in its entirety. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear. From Range Lake. To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passed. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Nunakput, that Committee Report 24-20(1) Standing Committee on Public Accounts report on the review of the Auditor General's 2024 audit of the Stanton Territorial Hospital Renewal Project be received and adopted by the Assembly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
From Range Lake. To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? Yay. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Nunakput, that pursuant to Rule 9.4(5)(a), the Government of the Northwest Territories table a comprehensive response to this report, including all recommendations within 120 days or at the earliest opportunity subsequent to the passage of 120 days. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Range Lake. To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Reports on standing and special committees. Reports on standing and special committees. Tabling of documents. Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the following document. Government of Northwest Territories response to motion 47-20(1) State of Emergency for Humanitarian Reasons for Norman Wells. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs. Table of documents. Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to table the following 3 documents. Environmental Rights Act Annual Report 2024-2025. Plain Language Summary, Bill 27, an Act to amend the Protection Against Family Violence Act, and Statement of Consistency for Bill 27, an Act to amend the Protection Against Family Violence Act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Table of documents. Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the following document, inter-activity transfers exceeding $250,000, April 1st, 2024 to March 31st, 2025. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Finance. Tabling documents. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to table a background or document for the First Responders Compensation Amendment Act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Range Lake. Tabling of documents. Tabling of documents. Notice of motion. Notice of motion. Motions. Member from Yellowknife North.
Mr. Speaker, I move that whereas the Legislative Assembly in motion 41-20 bracket 1 accepted the conclusion of the Integrity Commissioner that the member for Tunde Weledy violated the member's code of conduct, reprimanded the member, and ordered the member to pay a $2,500 fine. And whereas on April 24th, 2025, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly received from the Integrity Commissioner a supplemental report about costs relating to the complaint by Jennifer Patterson that the member for Tunde Weledy breached the Northwest Territories Legislative Assembly Members' Code of Conduct. And whereas on May 21st, 2025, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly tabled the supplemental report from the Integrity Commissioner, identified as tabled document 330-20 bracket 1. And whereas the Integrity Commissioner has recommended that the Legislative Assembly partially reimburse Ms. Patterson for the legal costs she incurred related to the making an investigation of her complaint that the member for Tunde Weledy breached the Members' Code of Conduct. And whereas the Legislative Assembly must accept or reject the Integrity Commissioner's recommendation within 15 sitting days of the report being tabled in the Assembly, now therefore I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Thabacha, that the supplemental recommendation of the Integrity Commissioner in table document 330-20 bracket 1 be accepted, and that the Legislative Assembly partially reimburse Ms. Patterson for the legal costs she incurred. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
From Yellowknife North. The motion is in order. To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. Motions. Sorry. First, notice of motions, first reading of bills. Notice of motion, first reading of bills. First reading of bills. Minister of Justice. No, ECC. ECE. What? Oh, Minister of Education, Culture and Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to present to the House Bill 28, an act to amend the Student Financial Assistance Act No. 2, to be read for the first time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Education, Culture and Employment. Pursuant to Rule 8.2 brackets 3, Bill 28 is deemed to have first reading and is ready for second reading. First reading of bills. Member from Range Lake.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to present Bill 29, First Responders Workers' Compensation Amendment Act, to be read for the first time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
From Range Lake. Pursuant to Rule 8.2 brackets 3, Bill 29 is deemed to have first reading and is ready for second reading. First reading of bills. Second reading of bills. Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to present to the House Bill 30, Supplementary Appropriations Act, Operations, Expenditures and Borrowing Authorization, No. 1, 2025-2026, to be read for the first time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
To Minister of Finance. Pursuant to Rule 8.2 brackets 3, Bill 30 is deemed to have first reading and is ready for second reading. First reading of bills. Second reading of bills. Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member from Yellowknife South, that Bill 27, an act to amend the Protection Against Family Act, be read for the second time. Bill 27, an act to amend the Protection Against Family Violence Act, amends the act to improve access to emergency protection orders and to address physical and online harassment. This bill widens the definition of family members who may apply for protection under the Act, adds stalking to the list of actions that constitute family violence and will establish a new civil recourse related to stalking for victims of family violence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Justice. The motion is in order to the principle of the bill. Question has been called. All those in favor? Yay. All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Bill 27 has been read a second time and is referred to the Standing Committee of the Assembly for further considerations. Second reading of bills. Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I move seconded by the Honourable Member for Cam Lake that Bill 30, Supplementary Appropriation Act, Operations Expenditures and Borrowing Authorization, Number 1, 2025-2026 be read for the second time. This bill makes supplementary appropriations for operations expenditures and borrowing authorization for the Government of the Northwest Territories for the 2025-2026 fiscal year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Question or thank you, member. The principle of the bill, or no, sorry, yeah, principle of the bill. Question has been called. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? The motion is carried. Bill 30 has been read a second time. Second reading of bills, second reading of bills. Item committee or consideration in committee of the whole of bills and other matters with the member from Toonaday-Willity in the chair.
Calling the committee to order. I will now call the committee to order to, I will now call the committee of the whole to order. What is the wish of the committee? And we'll go to the member from Nunavut Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the committee wishes to consider table document 340-20(1), supplemental estimates, infrastructure expenditures, number 1, 2025-2026. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does the committee agree? Okay, thank you, committee. We'll now continue with table documents 340-20(1). Does the Minister of Finance wish to bring witnesses into the chamber?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Sergeant Arns, please escort the witnesses into the chamber. Minister, please introduce your witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On my left, Bill McKay is the Deputy Minister of Finance, and on my right, Mandy Bolstad is the Deputy Secretary to Financial Management Board. Did it without notes.
Okay. Thank you. Members, we will continue with the industry and tourism. Total department not previously authorized, $3,868,000. Are there any questions? See no further questions? Oh, sorry. That's it. Sorry, no question? Okay. Thank you. Authorize $3,868,000. Are there any questions? Seeing no further questions, supplementary estimates. Infrastructure expenditure, number 1, 2025-2026. Department of Industry and Tourism and Investment. Capital investment expenditure, Total department not previously authorized, $3,868,000. Does committee agree? Thank you. Committee will now consider the Department of Infrastructure on page 15. Assets management not previously authorized, $26,180,000. Are there any questions? Seeing no further questions, supplementary estimates, infrastructure expenditure. Number 1, 2025-2026. Department of Infrastructure, capital investments, expenditures, asset management not previously authorized, $26,180,000. Does the committee agree? Okay, thank you. Energy and strategic initiatives not previously authorized, $12 million. Are there any questions? Seeing no further questions, supplementary estimates, infrastructure expenditure. Number 1, 2025-2026, Department of Infrastructure capital investment expenditures, energy and strategic initiatives not previously authorized, $12 million. Does the committee agree? Programs and services not previously authorized, $4,813,000. Are there any questions? See no further questions. Supplementary estimates. Infrastructure expenditure. Number 1, 2025-2026. Department of Infrastructure capital investment expenditures. Programs and services not previously authorized. $4,813,000. Does the committee agree? Thank you. Department not previously authorized. $42,993,000. Are there any questions? Seeing no further questions, supplementary estimates, infrastructure expenditure. Number 1, 2025-2026, Department of Infrastructure capital investment expenditure. Total department not previously authorized, $42,993,000. Does the committee agree? Thank you. Committee will now consider the Department of Justice on page 17. The correction not previously authorized, $752,000. Are there any questions? Seeing no further questions, supplementary estimates, infrastructure expenditure. Number 1, 2025-2026, Department of Justice, capital investment expenditures, corrections not previously authorized, $752,000. Does committee agree? Thank you. Court services not previously authorized, $3,477,000. Are there any questions? I'm going to go to the member from Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So listed under here is an amount that's not an offset by a lapsed amount, and it's not, doesn't appear to be offset by revenues from the Government of Canada. So there's an extra $2.3 million for funding for planning and design activities related to the Yellowknife Courthouse infrastructure project. Can the minister explain what that's about and why that was not foreseen earlier in our main budget? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you. I'm going to go to the minister to the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, this is an amount that is in response to concerns that have been raised by the judiciary. Now, I will answer maybe the last question before the first, which is whether or not it was foreseen. Mr. Chair, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but judiciary has raised concerns about the state of the building and whether or not it was adequate and fit to purpose over the course of some time. And there have been, over the course of time, different efforts to try to alleviate those concerns. What has been raised and what is proposed to be done on this present occasion. There's a number of specific risk areas, namely the spacing and whether or not it provides sufficient space to, for example, accommodate juries and have a separated space from the common areas when there's a jury that is hearing a jury trial, and particularly if they're being, when they're entering into deliberations. Similarly, a lack of any specialized court space or lack of any Indigenous appropriate space for efforts being made by the judiciary to better accommodate the residents of the Northwest Territories. Security concerns, Mr. Chair, and this is in response more recently to the nature and type of criminal matters that are being heard more frequently, and whether or not there needs to be an amendment to, for instance, the entryways, in particular screening, and that is something that we're hoping to be able to address now with this funding. And last but not least, Mr. Chair, simply the co-location of judicial branch of government with really any other party, and particularly those who might be appearing in front of the court, namely the Department of Justice. So, so with that, Mr. Chair, that does require a bit of work and planning, and we are looking at moving the Department of Justice out of what is now the 4th floor of the building that is co-located with the courts. This is in part meant to start to immediately deal with some of the security issues, but then also to line up to dealing with where and how to move the legal division out, and to be able to create a space that is more appropriate for the court usage exclusively. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to the member from Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to confirm that this is the very beginning stage of this project, like these concerns, obviously, they've just arisen sometime since we passed our last capital budget, and now this project is to begin. Can the minister just clarify? Thank you.
Thank you. I will go to the minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, so I can see over time that there's been, as I said, different questions and initiatives, but there has been a more recent outreach from the judiciary, and it was in response to that that efforts were made to see what more immediate steps could be taken. Again, to build an entirely new facility, which is something that's been asked, is well over the $200 million mark. And so there was an effort made here to try to respond, as I said, to recent outreach from judiciary. This amount gets moving in terms of some immediate changes to the entryway to help control entry and access to the courtrooms and to the courthouse section, as well as for planning of a renovation to particularly deal with the separation of the spaces and the enhancements to the jury room. That project is expected to take a few years. This is really, as the member said, step one. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to the member from the Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further questions from members? Okay, thank you. Continue on. Seeing no further questions, supplementary estimates, infrastructure expenditure. Number 1, 2025-2026, Department of Justice, capital investment expenditure, court services not previously authorized, $3,477,000. Does the committee agree? Thank you. Total department not previously authorized, $4,229,000. Are there any questions? Thank you. Seeing none, thank you. Supplementary estimates, infrastructure expenditure, number 1, 2025-2026, Department of Justice. Capital investment expenditure, total department not previously authorized, $4,229,000. Does the committee agree? Thank you. Members, there is a schedule on page 18 that details the impact of capital estimates. This schedule is not a votable item and is included as information only. Are there any questions? Seeing no further questions, we will continue on as this is not a votable item. Committee, do you agree that you have concluded consideration table documents 340-20(1), supplementary estimates, infrastructure expenditure, number 1, 2025-2026. Does the committee agree? Thank you. I'm going to go to the member from Inuvik Boot Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I move that consideration of table document 340-20 brackets 1, supplementary estimates infrastructure expenditures number 1 2025-2026 be now concluded, and that table document 340-20 brackets 1 be reported and recommended as ready for further consideration in formal session through the form of an appropriation bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. The motion is in order. To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion is carried. Table documents 340-20 brackets 1, supplementary estimates, infrastructure expenditure number 1, 2025-2026 will be reported as ready for consideration in a formal session through the form of appropriation bill. Thank you, Minister, and thank you to your witnesses for appearing before us. Sergeant at Arms, please escort the witnesses from the chamber. Thank you. I'm going to go to the member from the Nunavut Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I move the chair rise and report progress.
There is a motion on the floor to report progress. The motion is in order and non-debatable. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. I will now rise and report progress. Thank you.
Reports on Committee of the Whole. Member from Trinidad-Willity.
Mr. Speaker, your committee has been considering table documents 340-20 brackets 1 and would like to report progress with one motion carried. That consideration table documents 340-20 brackets 1 is concluded and the House concur in those estimates as amended, and that an appropriation bill to be based on thereon be introduced without delay. And Mr. Speaker, I move that the report of the Committee of the Whole be concurred with. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Trinidad-Willity. Can I have a seconder? Member from the Deitcho. All those in favor? Or no, yeah. To the motion. Question's been called. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Can't vote all the time there, Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs. Only can vote once. Motion carried. Third reading of bills. Third reading of bills. Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Cam Lake, that Bill 30, Supplementary Appropriations Act, Operations Expenditures and Borrowing Authorization Number 1, 2025-2026 be read for the third time. And Mr. Speaker, I request a recorded vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. The motion is in order. To the motion. Question has been called. Minister has asked for a recorded vote. All those in favor, please stand.
The member for Yellowknife South, the member for Cam Lake, the member for Hay River North, the member for Hay River South, the member for Inuvik Twin Lakes, the member for Nunakput, the member for the Deitcho, the member for Sod 2, the member for Inuvik Boot Lake, the member for Frame Lake, the member for Great Slave, the member for Yellowknife North, The member for Thabacha.
All those opposed, please stand.
The member for Tunaday-Willowday. The member for Yellowknife Centre. The member for Rangeley.
All those abstaining, please stand. All those in favor? 13, opposed 3, 0 abstention. Motion is carried. Third reading of bills. Third reading of bills. Orders of the day, Mr. Clerk.
Orders of the day for Thursday, May 29th, 2025 at 1:30 p.m. Prayer or reflection, minister statements, member statements, motions, returns to oral questions, oral question 666-20(1), recognitions of visitors in the gallery, acknowledgements, oral questions, written questions, returns of written questions, replies to the Commissioner's address, petitions, reports of committees on the review of bills, reports of standing and special committees, tabling of documents, notice of motions. Notice of motions for first reading of bills. First reading of bills. Second reading of bills. Bills 28 and 29. Consideration of Committee of the Whole of bills and other matters. Reports of Committee of the Whole. Third reading of bills. Orders of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. This House stands adjourned until Thursday, May 29th, 2025 at 1:30 p.m.